I'd like to reconvene the meeting of the Petaluma City School Board of Education. If you would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led for the last time, Mrs. Tennessee.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That is very nice. And that's a nice reminder for me to remind you all to please turn your cell phones off.
Turn off all the.
There we go. All right, so let's move right to item E, adoption and approval of the agenda. Take a motion on that.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We will play it as it lies. And then right to special recognitions and presentations. We have a makeup for Student of the Month that wasn't able to make it here before, so hang right there. Let's do it officially. I like it. She's ready.
Do it officially.
Okay. Do we have a narrative?
I don't see any representatives.
Okay. Well, then I would like to present to Jesse Peterson, Student of the Month. Good job. And I tell everybody, your name is going to be on the wall of fame back there.
Cool.
And you get a key to the building so you can come in anytime you like. Friday night, late, whatever, you can show off, just bring all your friends down here and show off. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I assume that we don't have to, we had a couple other makeup schools.
Yeah, I don't
We
see them
have-
here. I don't think they're going to.
Mr. Stewart is here if you would like to say a few words. That's good about Jesse.
What?
She's right there.
Jesse. Well, that would be great.
Finishing softball game.
Yeah.
How did you do?
They didn't pull me into the game. I don't know why.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
I guess I can't steal it back. I am here to present our May Student of the Month, Petaluma High School, Jessie Peterson. Jessie Peterson has challenged herself in her extracurricular activities throughout her 4 years as a student at Petaluma High School. She is a 4-year member of the Petaluma Future Farmers of America and is currently serving as vice president. She has participated in many events through FFA, including parliamentary procedure, specialty animal judging, extemporaneous public speaking, project competition, and many leadership conferences. She attended the National FFA Convention in October of 2011. Jessie also is a member of Petaluma High's ASB class. Last year she served as junior class treasurer, and this year she serves as one of 4 students in ASB's cabinet as ASB treasurer. With all these extracurricular activities, Jessie has still been able to maintain a 4.0 GPA in her senior year. After graduation, Jessie plans to attend Santa Rosa Junior College to obtain her general education certificate and participate in the Ag Ambassador program. She then plans to transfer to CSU Chico, where she will double major in animal science and agriculture education in hopes of returning to Sonoma County to be an ag teacher at Petaluma High School. FFA advisor at a local high school, wherever that is. So congratulations, Jessie.
Thank you very much. David, thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 2, Mr. Evans.
Yes, it's my pleasure to welcome the Chapter 212 President of the California School Employees Association, Loretta Cruz Mahdi, to come up and present the Employee of the Quarter for this quarter.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, superintendent, and all the people who came to support Jessie. We're all here for you, Jessie.
Yes.
I have the privilege of being the president of the classified unit here at Petaluma City Schools, CSEA Chapter 212. For those of you who don't know, the classified unit is made up of secretaries, custodians, campus supervisors, bus drivers, food service workers, and maintenance staff, just to mention a few classifications. I am very pleased to introduce this quarter's member of the quarter, John Pereira. Would you like to come up? You can face in the camera. Be sure you block me. That's the whole point. John started with the district as a sub-custodian in September of 2001. In January of 2002, he became a permanent custodian at Petaluma High School. Then in September of 2002, he moved to Kenilworth to be a custodian there. He returned to Petaluma High School as custodian in March of 2006, which is where he currently works. Now I'd like to read about some of John's qualities that made it easy for our committee to choose him for this honor. John is very hardworking, conscientious, respectful of all staff, quick to respond to requests with a smile. He has a positive attitude and is always ready to serve the needs of others. John stands out as a man who is willing to work hard and is appreciative of his job. He is willing to go above and beyond daily duties and has also offered his service to assisting with union duties. He is a pleasure to work with. He doesn't complain and is patient and attentive to details of his job. Please join me in congratulating John Perez, a member of the quarter. And I have a nice little certificate for you and your lumberjack $25 gift certificate.
Portuguese people hug, so. Great, thank you, John, thank you. And I will tell you, I did a site visit to Lumberjack the other day. It was pretty good. But seriously, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much.
We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Midge, let's go to you.
All right. Wow. Short meeting this morning, nice short agenda.
Thank you, sir. For you.
She's going to do budget.
Hey, Ron.
Don't feel obligated. Normally that we take a break, but
I figured with Jesse.
you too, Jesse.
Yes, please feel free to leave.
Here we go. Homework and things. You have one of these, right?
Jesse, you're gonna be a teacher?
Hopefully.
This will be
Yeah.
important.
Did they have you wrong
All right. Well, here we go. An update on financialization. The best part of the board meeting right now, just kidding. The student part is, where's Jessie? She's the best part of the board meetings. I'm being facetious. Okay. So what's new since the January governor's proposed budget? The good news is that the current year revenues are up, and they're up significantly by $4.5 billion. And that translates into about $2.9 billion for K-12. What's different about this is that they are actually honoring the Prop 98, where 40% of these dollars are being directed towards K-12, which is amazing. So what are they going to do with that $2.9 billion? They're going to do a pay down of the cash deferrals of about $1.6 million. This is staying true to the governor's proposal to pay down the wall of debt. And these cash deferrals, which have significantly impacted the district, actually will be a huge benefit. He's also proposing a $1 billion commitment towards implementation of Common Core standards. And it's, when we pencil it out, it's about $170 per student and equates to about $1.2 million to help the district support implementation of Common Core standards. So that made our services department very happy. The last component, which is a small dollar amount, $240 million towards implementing the local control funding formula. In case you forgot what that LCFF is, implementation. Yes, ma'am.
On the cash deferrals, that's not addressing the deficit percentage, which is 21 and 22%.
Yeah, so the
That-
22%.
That they didn't, that the state didn't fund COLAs over the 6-year period, is that
That is correct.
approximately?
This is just, actually, this does not provide us any new additional dollars to spend. This is strictly a cash transaction. And basically, they deferred so much of the cash payments to the district. They deferred over about 40% of what they owed us. And almost nearly wiped us out of cash at the end of last year. So this just helps bring the district cash balance up, and that's it. Okay, so 2013-14 is
conservatively estimated to actually decrease by about $941 million. I'm really actually happy to see that it's conservative, number one, and number two, they're not making up numbers. The legislative analyst believes that that number is too conservative, but quite frankly, I'd rather live with that number than mystery $4 billion being added to the budget that would never, ever come to fruition. So, yeah, it's conservative, but I think it's a good thing. The COLA for next year is down just slightly from 1.65% to 1.565%. Does it matter? It's really going to depend whether or not the local control funding formula is implemented or it's delayed. If it's delayed, then that COLA means something to us. He's also proposed a backfill for the federal ed sequestration of the funds that, because the federal government hasn't acted to make budget cuts across the board. This was a surprise. $60 million to backfill those cuts, which is great. And it's for special ed, and that's our encouragement program, so that's a relief. And the local control funding formula should just now be referred to as the control funding formula because the local part is sort of not there anymore. So that part is very significant, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. A computer malfunction. It's not advancing.
Look at the bottom, yeah.
Right, this.
Just the benefits, click on the bottom.
Shoot. Anybody know why it would be advancing? It was working just fine before.
Go back to slideshow start.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So what about the local control funding formula? Well, since there's more than a majority of Democrats in office right now, there's talk that it has a good chance of passing, since they only need just a simple majority anymore to pass the budget. The promise is that no district loses any money for 2013-14 under this new formula. Some gain significantly, and others not so much. There's the supplemental component for EL folks, EL students, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and then foster kids within that supplemental grant. The concentration part of it, which you would only see if you have a population that exceeds 50% of that, and we don't at a district level. On a district level, the elementary is about 42% SED/EL, and the secondary district is about 36%. So we don't meet that criteria. It eliminates almost all categorical and Tier 3 funding, which is how this district and many others have survived by having the flexibility in the Tier 3 categoricals. So the programs that are not included in that new bucket of supplemental or categorical will be the after-school safety program, transportation, special education, the Quality Education Investment Act, QIA, better known as QIA, thank you. The child nutrition, which doesn't even operate in the general fund, and then the targeted instruction improvement block grant, which we also do get. So when we look at, we've plugged in some numbers to this local control funding formula on a website. And if you look at the blue line on this screen, that's where our revenue limit is funded. If you look at the green line, that is the revenue limit plus our categorical funding on the current model. The yellow line is what we would be receiving under the local control funding formula. However, when I actually do the numbers, and I don't quite get this outcome that the revenue limit and current categorical funding model is higher than the local control funding formula for 13-14, which is what you see right here. I kind of have the opposite, and they're close. So my budget is built on the current information. So, but you can see out here in 14-15, they're saying that the local control funding formula for elementary will exceed our old funding model, and then by 15-16, it will really start to go up. So we'll see. And they're talking about fully implementing this funding formula by 2019-20, so we have a while to go. So if you do comparison, and these are the numbers that I plugged in, our current year funding, which is, by the way, this is one of my questions about this funding model. Right now, we're in a declining enrollment situation, so we're being funded on prior year ADA. I don't know how that plays out in this new model, and I have questions in it that I don't have answers to yet. So right now, we're receiving $10.3 million. Our categoricals for elementary are just under $2 million. Transportation, $80,000. And then the targeted instructional block grant, $145,000. So our current total for elementary is just over $12.5 million. So if we were to apply this funding formula to today's funding level, and they had all the money to implement it, we would be receiving just under $16 million. This funding gap is the difference between this and this, but this is the amount that they're saying that we're going to receive over this amount for the current year. So they're saying that this is what we should count on for next year. We'll see. There's a lot of mystery and a lot of the behind the scenes things that I can't quite get to that number.
Why would they have a funding model that they don't fund?
Well, they're hoping that the economy is going to grow sufficiently and that I suppose other things would occur that would allow them to fund this. But when you think about the fact that in several years, our current tax rate will go down, so that will be less revenues, not more. It's not even status quo.
Right.
So how we will get to that just under $16 million is yet to be seen. But again, they're not anticipating funding that until 2019, 2020. Okay? So this is a visual over here. This is where we are in the current year. This is the categorical and all these other buckets of funding. This is where they anticipate that will be, and this blue portion right here is that $404,000. But this is really where we should be. Okay. So the secondary, kind of almost a replay of the elementary. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part. But I will show you that our current year revenue limit is just under $28.5 million for the secondary district. Categoricals, transportation, targeted instruction, just under $34 million in the current year that we're receiving for the high school district. Now, the target, just like we talked about earlier, we should be being funded at over $41 million. And that gap is almost $3 million. But they're saying that we're going to get $855,000 more than this amount. So they're saying that we're going to receive $34,846 and change for the secondary district next year. We shall see. So revenue limits or the local control funding formula. So the governor is really pushing hard on the local control funding formula. Probably some reasons are that, you know, as different groups start to say, well, no, you can't do this to my program, or this program, or that program, the longer it goes out, the more chance these people are going to, you know, pick apart this funding formula. So the Senate is recommending that it get delayed a year so that other things like unintended consequences can be worked out. And it can be analyzed a little bit further. So if that happens, we would be using our current funding model for 13-14. In his May revision, this model, because it's, I guess it's taking into account that they will pay down this deficit over that period of time. But the other interesting thing is there's no reference to statutory cost of living adjustment in this new funding model. So I don't know if it's, I thought it was a separate component in Ed Code, so I'll have to verify whether or not it's addressed in another part of Ed Code or not. But within the proposed budget, there's no reference there.
And on the deficit factor, is there something in the Ed Code that says they have to pay that back? And does it need to be defined specifically, this is that portion?
Well, under the Prop 98 rules,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
but, yeah, it all remains to be seen, so.
So until they actually pass the budget as law, which they're supposed to do by June 15th, we're looking at the current model. So we'll see. So, but the governor's being pretty tough on this stance. So if they do fund the, based on the current model, remember this alligator, they call this the alligator picture, nice little set of jaws there. Here's where we should be funded on a per student basis. Here's where we were in 07-08, and here's where we are. So they're saying that this jaw would begin to close a little bit from this point to this point, based on the funding that he is proposing. And if they reallocated it based on COLA and or growth, whatever else, whatever resources they're gonna do to actually reduce that deficit, which they actually do show that. There is a number. So even if they were to implement the local control funding model, and we're out at 2019-20, we're still $1,100 lower per student than the national average. That's huge. It still really doesn't address the adequacy part of actually funding a good educational program. Let's see. I think I already shared with you that transportation and targeted instruction will still be an add-on to the funding formula. K-3 is also an add-on to the funding formula, as well as career tech ed. Adult education proposal has been revised and actually delayed for at least 2 years at this point. He's talking about providing $30 million to the Chancellor's Office at the community college level to explore ways to implement adult ed becoming commingled or integrated with the community college group. So we'll see what that looks like. The regional occupational ROP, which we do benefit from, that will be funded for an additional 2 years, but they are completely silent on what happens after those 2 years. So that is really interesting. I don't know what will happen to that program. And the January proposal for technology-based instruction has also been put on hold, at least until next year. They're looking at a whole host of issues before rolling that out. So here we go with the new non-local control funding formula. So there's the local control and accountability plan, a new thing that we'll have to develop. It's sort of akin to our technology plan or the LEA plan. Lots of work, a lot of paper. So the local goals will be focused on student improvement, and the spending plan will need to be aligned with those goals. So a new twist. This is a very large twist. The county superintendent can reject our plan, so which we don't have right now. They can reject our plan if we're not going to meet our financial obligations, but they're not rejecting our plan because they don't like what we're saying about how we're implementing our instructional program. This gives them that ability, which is amazing. Let's see. Oh, hold on, 1 second here. It's just unbelievable. If it could have gotten any worse, it did. I can't believe the requirements of providing a spending plan and then having the county and state superintendent and even FICMAN, if they don't like our spending plan, be able to come in and reject it. So here's our new plan process to adopt our LCAP. So there will be, step one will be consultation, district assistants and intervention team, teachers, principals, school personnel, and pupils. So that's step one. Step two, we would present for review and comment to a parent advisory committee and an English learner parent advisory committee. Step three would be an opportunity for public input and a notice of the opportunity to submit written comment and a public hearing. This is not so different than what we do currently now, steps 3 and 4 really. Well, except that there's, on step 4, there's an actual adoption of this new document on top of the budget document that we already provided you for approval. So it would be adopted concurrently with our budget and submitted to the County Office of Education for their approval. So the concerns about this funding formula is that the new normal is anything but. It still doesn't address the fact that we've lost 20% of all of our categorical funding. And when you talk about that being $4.9 million, that's a lot of money. Some school districts, and we don't know how this really is going to play out for us yet, will never be able to restore the programs that we had in 07-08. In 07-08, we had a fabulous summer school program to help those kids who were behind and in need and additional support. I don't know when we could return to that. We've cut our adult education program in half, things like that. It ignores the fact that we're not catching up to the national, not even the national average, forget about like states where we should be funding our educational program. This plan has to be a 5-year plan and updated each year and presented with the adopted budget. And there's also a maintenance of effort requirement. So just like special education funding, where we have to prove that we have not spent less every year for a specific group of students, we will have to do the exact same thing with this program. So when I do the math for this, one of my biggest concerns, and I have a question into school services, and this is very significant. When you look at that supplemental grant, it's about $3.8 million. And that is supposed to just go for our EL students, our SED students, and foster kids. Right now, we're maybe spending a third of that, and that's being very generous. So now you're talking about the fact that we would have to really lay off in other areas of education to support that, if this is true. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm still waiting for an answer. So the governor, he wants to start this next year. The Senate wants it to be delayed until 14-15. The Assembly, we don't know where, they don't really have a clue about what they want to do and when they want to do it. They just think that they shouldn't do it. The funding target at full implementation, which is 2019-20, is that we would get back to the 07-08 statewide average undeficited revenue limit. Oh, yay. The Senate, let's see, their intent is basically the same as the governor's, and the Assembly, same. The concentration factor, the governor has not backed off on that super concentration factor if you have a population that exceeds the 50%. So you won't back off from that. The Senate and the Assembly do actually want, they want the basic block grant to increase so that the districts can choose how they use the funds. So on the restrictions for funds generated by the eligible pupils, during the transition, spend no less than we have in 2012-13, so this becomes a base year. And the Senate wants to require LEAs to spend funds to serve those pupils and not supplant. So that means if we're already doing something over here, we can't shift it over here. All that almost 3.8 million would be on top of what we're already doing. Really? And the Assembly. So ending balance trends. Based on the current funding model, I don't feel comfortable enough to use the information in the local control funding formula and integrate that into our multi-year projection. And the current funding model does show that if we maintain that, our deficit would actually go down from the 22.272% down to 18.997%. At least that's a movement in the right direction. The trends include the tentative settlement of all bargaining units, $1.8 million for the 8 days being added back into the school calendar, and about $374,000 to increase the health benefits cap so that our employees are not paying anything additional with regard to the increase in health costs. So, last slide, folks. Hang in there. So what does the current year look like? Right now, this net decrease here for the current year, at 3.2 million, about $1.7 million of that is prior year one-time dollars. So we're deficit spending in this year by about $1.5 million. Okay. So after you consider that, we will end our current year, and this again is conservative. We always end up higher than this. $6.1 million in the current year. Next year, our deficit spending goes up by about $1 million. I mean, this again includes the 1.8 million plus the 374,000 for the added days and health insurance costs. So we're not getting enough funds here to support what we're doing, but we know that it's a huge priority for the board and the district to add back these days. And because we have a sufficient enough reserve to go through the years, we feel that it's worth the investment. So at the end of 13-14, we estimate that we will spend down our unappropriated balance to just under $3.9 million. In 14-15, we have a higher COLA out here, so you can see that our deficit spending goes down a little bit, and we're estimating that we'll end up with a $1.6 million ending fund balance. Now, when we adopt this budget, we have to go out another year to 2015-16, and if we're still spending, deficit spending at this level, but we only have a reserve of that, we're obviously either A, hoping that that local control funding formula will start to pay off, and we will hopefully get to where we're spending what we're bringing in, or we would have to make some decisions about what we would need to reduce. Hopefully that won't be the case. We've done enough of that. So that's it for my presentation. Questions?
Thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
Jesse, now that we have quashed all your dreams of becoming a teacher, it's fine, we can offer you the opportunity to head out if you'd like, and we would welcome you staying. Steve, we have another presentation.
Yes, and I'm not sure, is Dr. Joseph here? Oh, okay, there he is. I was going to say, I just don't see mine. Okay.
Yeah, I was just shutting down. I wasn't aware
Yeah,
of
so
another-
this evening we have Dr.
No, that's okay.
Do you want to help me with your last name? I can say her, Medical Director of the San Antonio School Health-Based Center Project. He's going to present information on the new health center going in at San Antonio this summer, and he will be the Health Center Project Director and the Medical Director, and he will let us know the project, where we are, and the programs and services we'll provide there next year.
Thank you. So we're pulling up my PowerPoint here, but I'll just kind of do a brief overview because I know we don't have too much time.
We got plenty.
Fair enough, okay. So my goal tonight is just to bring everybody up to speed about the project in general. I know you guys know a lot about it, you know, the clinics that are going at San Antonio and Casa Grande. But just to do an overview, I'm not going to get into too much depth because of the time, but certainly if people have questions, I mean, that's a big reason that we're here, is to answer those questions. So let me see if I can pull up my slides. It's okay.
Folks, if you're here to make public comment, would you please pick up a yellow card in the back and fill it out and get it up here to the front, please. Thank you.
So I assume you guys will interrupt me with questions as I'm going. So like Steve said, I'm Dr. Agazer, Joseph Agazer. I work at Petaluma Health Center, and I'm going to be the medical site director at the San Antonio clinic that we're opening this fall. What is the school-based health center? You guys know a lot about this, but my goal, I said from the beginning, is just to provide a brief overview for people in the audience as well. So a school-based health center is located on a school campus. These health centers have been shown to improve not only health, but also academic success. And that's pretty well documented, and I have studies if you're interested in more on that. There's over 200 clinics now in California, school-based health centers. The closest one to us would be up in Santa Rosa, LCL High School. As a clinic, it will be very similar to what we are proposing and doing here in Petaluma. And the whole idea of the school-based health center is it goes to the student populations that aren't necessarily and historically have been shown not to access health care. to the detriment of their personal health, but also their academic success as well. So that's the whole idea behind the school-based health centers, the underlying philosophy. So who are we at Petaluma Health Center? It was started in the 1990s. Our clinic grew out of the fact that there was a large population in Petaluma that wasn't being served, people that didn't have insurance, and people that had like Medi-Cal, the government insurance, that couldn't access regular clinical services in Petaluma. So our clinic is a federally qualified health center, and what that means is most of our funding comes from the federal government, and we're subsidized to serve the underserved and the uninsured population of Petaluma. Not just Petaluma, our catchment area is Cotati, Roanoke Park, and Pine Grove as well. So we have about 20,000 patients that we see. So not a small population, to keep busy. And our goal is not just to provide regular office visits, but we actually do a lot. Hopefully you guys are familiar with us a little bit. If not, this will be a brief introduction. We do group visits, we do mental health, we do nutrition, we have exercise classes, we do acupuncture. The goal is to really provide for the health of the whole individual, holistically, not just pass out medications. And that's why I think we were interested in the school-based health centers as well, because we view that as an opportunity to help the health of the entire community. And in 2011, we moved to our new site, which is where we're at now, on North Petaluma Boulevard. Hopefully you guys have seen it, maybe not, just a couple pictures. It's a really nice health center that we were able to get through a federal grant at the time. So we feel really fortunate to be able to have this health center. That being said, why do we feel like we need to kind of break out of our walls and get out into the community, which is what we're doing with the school-based health centers. And this will be our first clinic outside of our regular clinic walls that we'll be operating. Studies have shown that there's a very high rate of unmet needs in the youth of Petaluma, as far as asthma, mental health, substance abuse, different health aspects. The needs are largely unmet. And that's for a lot of reasons. Like we talked about historically, adolescents especially don't access the healthcare they need. I mean, a lot of them do. A lot of them do a great job of it. A lot of them don't. And there's a myriad of reasons. One of them we feel like, and we did studies on this as well, is that from our population standpoint, it's difficult for them to actually get to our site. Because we're up in North Town, so transportation is an issue. That's certainly a barrier. We have a great clinic, but we're up on the north side of town, on the other side of the 101. And then this clinic also, we feel like, is a good thing for Petaluma because it can provide a referral site for the other schools. The San Antonio campus, as you know, is small. It's 150 students, a little bit less even. But that site has a lot of high-need students, but also can provide as a referral site for Petaluma High School, for different schools in the district. And we've been working with the school nurses and the counselors as well to set up a referral system so students can come to us. So our goal at the clinic is to provide the same level of care that we do at the health center. Provide kind of comprehensive health, including vaccination, including mental health. We're going to have a counselor on site. And I'm going to get to the blueprint of the site specifically in a minute. Our aim is to serve all the students that have parental waivers. There's some services that students can access, adolescents can access without parental permission in the state of California, but we need parental permission, obviously. So as we're enrolling students in San Antonio this summer, we're working with the administration to get a waiver if parents want their kids to be seen at the clinic or not. And so we won't necessarily be able to see everyone, but I think a large percentage of the population, the student body, we will be serving.
I'm sorry, did I just understand you to say that you have to have a parental waiver to see a student?
For most services, yes.
For not all, but
Not all. So there's some mental health services, there's some other services that are under California law that adolescents can access without parental permission. But the vast majority of services need parental permission. So we can do some. But if a student doesn't have this waiver and they come to our clinic and they have like the flu, we can't serve them until we get permission for that.
thank you.
If they're under 18, of course. If they're over 18, then that changes. Our goal is to support academic success, and so a big part of what we're doing is working with the administration and working with the school nurses to minimize absenteeism. I'm actually a former teacher. Before I went to medical school, I taught for 4 years in public school, so I know that that's an issue, and I hopefully can see the issue from both sides, medically and academically. So specifically for the San Antonio High School site, how did we get our funding? Mostly through a federal grant, like I talked about. We are raising some funds to make this happen. Our clinic is committed to having this project succeed, but most of the funding was from a federal grant through HRSA, which is Health and Human Services. The clinic has been designed, and I'll show you the blueprint in a second. It's being built as we speak, or maybe, not as we speak, but today probably. And it's scheduled for delivery in 2013, this July. It's supposed to be put on campus. It's a modular building, which what that means is basically a standalone structure that we place in the parking lot where there's room in San Antonio. We'll be providing 18 hours of services is the plan, starting this academic school year. We're gonna, like I talked about, try to offer comprehensive health care, including mental health. The administration at San Antonio and the counselors in the district have been very adamant that they feel like there's a lot of unmet needs, especially in San Antonio. So mental health is a big part of what we're going to be doing at the San Antonio site. And we're scheduled and we're on track to open in August of 2013. So just a couple months from now. And like I mentioned, the San Antonio site will also serve as a referral site for other schools in the district. And so during school hours, we're going to have overlapping hours. The hours that we're open on during the San Antonio day will be only for San Antonio students. And then after school, the plan is for other students from other schools to come. And if they haven't signed that waiver, they will have to come with a parent. This is the blueprint. It's small, it's 24 by 40 feet, but hopefully you can read that. On the left, there's 2 exam rooms. You can see the beds diagrammed out. 2 small medical exam rooms. There's a small bathroom. And then there's a mental health room over to the top right there. And then on the bottom right is a small waiting room where about 4 students can sit. And then there's a small office where we'll be working as providers and as a front office person. So at all times when we're open, we're going to have a medical provider. I'll be there part of the time, and then there'll be another provider from the Petaluma Health Center, a counselor, a medical assistant, and then a front office person. There'll be 4 of us there at a time. And then Casa Grande, just to briefly touch on that, is very similar to San Antonio. We got the same grants for that project. It's scheduled, it's also going to provide comprehensive care, including mental health. Very similar, the structure of the blueprint is very similar. Scheduled to open next year, so the idea is to start this year with San Antonio, learn from that experience, and then move on to Casa Grande and open the clinic there next year. The one difference between Casa Grande and San Antonio is because Casa Grande is a big enough high school in itself, and for 1,000 students, we feel that it will be able to support the clinic without being a referral center. So it won't be focused as much on having people come from around the district. And also the neat thing about Casa Grande, as you guys know, is they have the health careers pathways students, which I think we're going to be able to work with them and augment what they do and really support their efforts, and we have a lot of common goals. So that's my brief presentation. Please write down my email if you have questions that you don't think of right now. There's also 2 web pages I put at the bottom. One is our web page, which has a lot of information about what we do. But the other is about school-based health centers in general, and that's the State of California Association, the School Health Centers.org. They have a lot of great information about school-based health centers as well.
I'm just curious that if the center will be open, perhaps at the fall back to school nights, so that parents could have an opportunity to see what services might be provided.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, so I'd like that suggestion because we're trying to think of ways to get the word out, essentially, right? And so I think that would be great. Is that right at the beginning of the school year?
It's usually in the first month.
Yes. Yeah, so that would be a perfect opportunity. I agree. Just to have parents be able to walk through the clinic and see what we do. We're hoping to open the clinic maybe a couple days even before the school year, so people can see, before the school year starts what we do as well. Yeah, so we're definitely thinking about that.
Okay, good.
Couple of questions. Will the clinic be dealing with some of the campus issues like birth control, prenatal care, that sort of thing?
Well, we will provide comprehensive services like we do at our clinic, yeah. So reproductive health is part of that. Prenatal visits, so San Antonio has the pregnant teens and the teenage mothers at the school, so we're also going to be providing well child visits for the kids. And then OB care, we may provide some, OB is obstetric care, but some people don't know. We may provide some of that care at the clinic, but some of that may be at the bigger clinic. Because we probably won't have an ultrasound machine, just we can't afford to have everything that we would want in the smaller clinic at San Antonio.
And now on the financial end of it, if children are served there who have insurance, or means or what have you, is there a back billing of that insurance, or it's everybody gets served, no questions asked regarding insurance?
Yeah, so what we have to do to make this sustainable is certainly anyone with Medi-Cal, which is the government insurance, we bill them all the time, we do that. People with private insurance, I think what we'll probably end up doing that other school-based health centers have done is we'll probably serve them, once, but then we won't be able to get reimbursed for that, some of that. Some of it we will, actually. Most private insurance we will. It's more the Kaiser patients that we won't as much, and so we can see them, once or twice, but we can't see them for like regular care, ongoing, like child visits, if you will, adolescent visits. And so those visits will probably have to defer to Kaiser more.
And then the last question, those records will all be available to the parents when it's legally
Of course.
permissible?
Yeah, and so our health records are actually in the same system. It's going to be the same computer system that we use at the clinic. So the same rules apply. Yeah, exactly.
Good question. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you. No, we- That's what I need.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a very quick break for, after we do the presentations, we'll take a very quick break in case anybody needs to head out. We'd encourage you to stay. We hope you stay, but it is finals week, so 1 minute. 2 minutes. And if anybody would like to speak in public comment, please fill out the card and bring them up to Sue. The only place I get to do this. Please respect. Can't do that at home. And you're enjoying it. You know it. All right, so let's see, we've got to move to item G, approval of the minutes of May 14th. I believe, Sue, everybody was available for those minutes?
So moved.
A motion and a second. Any changes, comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Minutes are 5-0. Okay. Comments from the public, and I have some speaker cards. This is going to be our last chance to fill out speaker cards while I read the very lengthy legalistic disclosure to you all about public speaking at a board meeting. So I've got some here. If there's anybody else who would like to speak, please go ahead and fill out that card right now and get it up to Sue. So item H, comments from the public. Under Government Code, Section 549-543A. Members of the public have the right to address the governing board on any items of interest, providing it relates to the subject matter jurisdiction of the school district. In other words, things that we actually control. In accordance with Board Policy BP 9323, each speaker is allocated a total of 5 minutes to address the board for a maximum of 20 minutes on each subject matter. While the above referenced government code allows speakers to criticize the district's policies, procedures, programs, services, and/or employees, the district does have a current policy, BPAR 1312, specific to complaints against employees. Should comments from the public pertain to a specific district employee, the board requests that a complaint first be submitted in writing to the employee's immediate supervisor for investigation. The board does not take action or discuss items not appearing on the agenda. The board values public comment and wishes to convey that although board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda, we listen carefully and appreciate and value input from the public. And I'd just like to reiterate the last sentence because the prior 12 sentences make it sound like that's not the case, and that is the case. We do value your input. So I've got a number of speaker cards, and Mr. Stewart, I have one more. I'd like to get these in order so we can pass that along. Everybody? Go here. All right, we're going to start off with, and make sure that I understand this correctly. So you've got Mr. Chris, and you've got Heather Campbell, and Mr. Herzog here as well. Is everybody speaking, or is it just you?
The four of us.
Together or separate?
Together 5 minutes each, together 4 minutes.
Okay, so you each get 5 minutes. So if you want to come up, you're welcome to stand next to each other, but you each get 5 minutes. Oh yeah, let's get, Rick, would you want to get my phone? That's right.
Gotta have something ready to be here.
You hurt your back one of these days doing that.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
You're bigger than I am.
So, as you individually speak, if you could just introduce yourself, and I think Sue needs the,
Sue has it. It's on the cards.
So, whoever
Hi.
wants to start.
I'm Heather Campbell, and I'm the athletic trainer and sports medicine teacher at Casa Grande High School. And I've been asked to speak to you guys tonight about the services that I provide at Casa Grande. An athletic trainer is an allied health professional that specializes in prevention, recognition, treatment, and rehabilitation of athletic injuries. I've been providing these services to the athletes at Casa Grande for almost 15 years. 3 years ago, I implemented a baseline concussion program. This program provides baseline testing to all football, soccer, basketball, and cheer participants. This next year, it's also going to include volleyball and wrestling. Along with conducting the baseline tests, I oversee the care of the athletes post-concussion, making sure that the return to play protocols are followed, ensuring that the athletes do not return to play until they are within their baseline and have been cleared by a doctor. I also evaluate many other injuries that occurred during practices and games. 60 to 70% of injuries occur during practice, so it's important to have a qualified person to provide the proper treatment for those injuries. This past year, CASA has had 20 diagnosed concussions. 3 were from soccer, 2 were from cheerleading, 1 was from basketball, and the remaining 14 were from football. Only 5 of those concussions occurred during a competition. The rest of them all occurred during practice times. I've also treated 7 fractured legs, several sprained ankles, shoulders, and knees, along with muscle injuries and contusions or bruises. I am the liaison between the parents, the coaches, the athletes, and the doctor. I am the person that does all the documentation for the athletic injuries, and this includes the district accident reports. So all the accident reports that come to you, I have filled out, along with my own injury reports that I do. I'm present at all football games, home and away, as well as all home soccer, basketball, baseball, and most softball games, and that includes boys and girls. During the football season, I am in the training room until 5 o'clock most nights to provide care for any injuries that may occur during the practice. And there's many times when I'm on my way home and my cell phone rings and I'm back at CASA to provide more care. I do all the pregame taping and make sure that there is water and ice at each home event. So any team that comes to Casa Grande will not only they'll receive water for their team, plus our team will have water and ice. So if there's any injuries, that's provided and on the field right there. I do the inventory of the supplies, order when is necessary, and I make sure that each team is provided with a stocked medical kit for their season, and I restock that medical kit as necessary. So that's basically what I do. Do you guys have any questions?
Okay.
Oh, they can't hear? Okay.
Okay, my name's Rick Chris. I'm the head football coach at Petaluma High School, also a teacher. I started at Petaluma High in 1989, where I was an assistant for 20 years for Steve Ellison, and some of the roles that Heather had mentioned, I kind of took on because there was really nobody else to do it. At that time, we had about 9 on-campus coaches. Throughout the years, obviously, with retirements and stuff, things had changed. 3.5 years ago, I became the head football coach, and now I am the only on-campus coach for our football program. I'm also the only person on our campus that has the capabilities of taping any student. So throughout the year, especially during football season, I tape volleyball players, basketball players, soccer players, sometimes soccer players before our games. I tape all of our football players, freshman, JV, and varsity. I tape them every day at practice, and I also tape them before every game. I'm also responsible for some of the things. Obviously, I don't do as good a job as Heather does because of the time constraints. A lot of times I have between 3 and 4 o'clock to get everything done. And that is getting water on the field, making sure that all the medical stuff is prepared, and that's on top of my coaching job. I do set up all the practices. I have to supervise all the players. We have about 120 football players at our school, and because I'm the only on-campus coach, and I have coaches coming in between 3:30 and 4, I'm basically the only one that's responsible for them. I do
help out with post-injury stuff as much as I can. I am in contact with physical therapists and doctors and things like that. So if there's any special tapings, I have to go and find out basically how to do it. And usually from year to year, because I do forget, but I do the best I can. Mostly I do a lot of ankles. I do anywhere from 20 to 30 ankles before practice, and about 15 to 20 thumbs or wrists that I do before practices. I do have to do bandages and band-aids and ice and all that kind of stuff as well. And that is all between 3 and 4. Sometimes I use my prep period, or sometimes I do it at lunch and the kids have to walk around with tape on them throughout the day. During the games, I tape before the freshman games, I tape before the JV games, and then I have to tape before my games. I do have help with one other coach, Dave Potterack, but he is a retired ex-teacher that comes from time to time. During the varsity, during the JV games, I do take the varsity in, where I have to, just before I do all my pre-game stuff, I do all the taping at that time. Dave does help me during that time. During the game, I do have a wonderful guy that EMT Dennis O'Neill that helps us out during the game. But if there's any particular things that need to be taped, I usually have to do them at halftime. Usually while I'm talking to my kids, unfortunately. On Saturdays, I usually give about an hour to my players. If there's any injuries, and give them as much advice. Mostly if it's out of the realm of my knowledge, I usually just basically tell them that they have to go see a doctor, and I can't let them back on the field until they see a doctor. If there's a little banged up, things that I can take care of, ice, any kind of taping and things like that, I'll take care of them at that time. But for the most part, I only get about an hour, and that's on top of our practice and film and things like that. So those are basically my responsibilities. That's on top of being the head coach and being in charge of 3 different programs. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Trent Herzog. I'm the head football coach at Casa Grande High School. I'm here to talk about our head athletic trainer, Heather Campbell. Heather's been with us. She's going on her 15th year. She's been with us since 1999. I'm going on my 5th year as head coach. I've been there all 15 years as an assistant prior to being the head coach. And every year I see Heather's job putting more and more time into it, more and more effort. Heather's average hours per week during the season is at least 15 hours, sometimes up to 20. She'll help the kids out on her lunch break. She has them come into her room to do some injury prevention. Also works with a lot of injuries. She's there every day after school. She's taping, she's icing. She's at most of our practices. Like she said, a few times I've had to call her and ask her to come back 5:30, 6 o'clock at night because of an injury. She's as valuable as any coach on my staff and any player I've ever had. I wouldn't know what to do without her. She brings so much to our football program and our athletic program in general. Starting 3 years ago, as she said, she started a baseline test. We were the first school in the Redwood Empire, not only Sonoma County, but the Redwood Empire, from San Francisco, Golden Gate Bridge, all the way up to the Eureka border, that started this baseline testing. Since then, we've probably doubled in injuries, which I think is a good thing, because we diagnose every concussion, any type of injury. She's there to diagnose now. Back in the days, 15, 20 years ago when I got into coaching, a lot of injuries would be passed over. The kids wouldn't say anything. Now we educate our kids every day. If you have a headache, if you feel lightheaded, if you have these symptoms, please report. So there has been more injuries, and I think a lot of it's to do that we're about safety with our football players and our athletics in general. And Ms. Campbell does a great job with that. During the season, on Saturdays, she gets there at 10 a.m. Sometimes she doesn't leave till 1. So she's there for 3 hours. We play on Friday nights. She's there for 3 hours on Saturdays. Every day, at least till 5, 3 to 5. So again, she's putting in 15 to 20 hours a week. Her time, I can't say enough. And right now we pay her out of athletics, just like the coaches, she doesn't make very much money. She's putting a lot of her own time and effort into this, and it'd be great if the whole Petaluma City schools could hire athletic trainers, or looking to hire an athletic trainers. I think it would help both schools tremendously. And again, we're all about the safety of our kids and our student athletes. And having Miss Campbell around it takes so much off my plate. I can't even imagine having to do what Coach Chris does. And like I said, she's as valuable as any coach, any player, anyone in our athletic, any of our athletic teams. 2 years ago, when we were playing Petaluma High School, about 45 minutes before kickoff, we were walking out of the locker room, and I looked over to my left, and I saw Coach Chris taping ankles. And I just shook my head, and I took a second, and I thought to myself, I'm glad I don't have to do that. And a lot of respect for him for doing that, but I can't imagine having to do all the things he has to do and coach my team and prepare my team to go out and play in a football game. Thank you very much for your time.
I have a lot to cover. Do I get to take the extra time that these people did? Then I'm going to talk quickly.
We'll listen.
I'm Ann Reed. I'm the parent of student athletes. I want to thank each of you for your time and all the parents that set aside their time to come out and show support. You're going to see people here from CASA and Petaluma that came out, parents of student athletes. We've set aside our time to come out to show support in hiring of an athletic trainer for the Petaluma school system. I also want to thank our distinguished guest. The handsome fellow in the back is Dr. Stephen Winter. Dr. Winter is the kinesiology department chair and also runs the master's program at SSU. He's also a certified athletic trainer. Thank you, Dr. Winter, for joining us tonight. I especially want to thank Heather and our 2 district's head football coaches for coming out to speak to us. I think this should talk about how important this matter is to our coaches in our school. While I'm very glad that CASA has Heather providing such a valuable service to their school's community, it's obviously a very important missing element to the Petaluma athletic program. We've all read the newspapers and seen all the recent attention to concussion prevention and the dangers of multiple concussions, and the damage of having a second concussion soon after suffering the first. We're also aware of Assembly Bill 1451, which came into effect in January of this year, that requires all coaches and volunteer coaches have concussion training and certification. Petaluma will finally be running baseline testing for each player, and that's a good start, but it falls short of our goal. It's easy to tell when a limb is broken, but not as easy to tell if a player who's hyped up on adrenaline and who wants to get back into the game has suffered a concussion. We're really putting ourselves in a position of liability. Santa Rosa City Schools has been successful in petitioning their Board of Education, and they will now have athletic trainers at every one of their high schools, and I believe 2 continuation schools. While we are encouraged by the move that the BOE of Santa Rosa has taken, it makes our need all the more obvious. It's become clear that this is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Santa Rosa has been working with SSU and SRJC, and they have developed a job description to offer students that are candidates in Dr. Winter's master's program in the form of an internship. This internship has been written up as a position at the high school of Santa Rosa for 20 hours a week and 36 weeks a year for a stipend of $15,000. This is not a fully loaded employee. The number is the number, 15,000. These students are already received their BAs and they are certified athletic trainers, but they're continuing their education under Dr. Winter. I took him aside and asked him if he'd be willing to add Petaluma to his program, and he said yes, assuming there is room. Athletic trainers are recognized by the American Medical Association as a medical professional, whereas a principal, vice principal, or other administrator who happens to be at a game is not. That can make a big difference when our children's injuries are in question. I've spoken to an EMT, and there are 2 represented here this evening that volunteer at Petaluma High School games. They are in support of us hiring an athletic trainer. If your coaches, your parents, your students, and the volunteers that work on the field are in agreement that we need this, then we do need this. Now I'm bringing you an affordable solution, but sometimes solutions have conditions. This is one of those times. The reality is that the master's program that I told you about only has so many candidates. Sorry, I know I have to talk fast. It will be a matter of who comes to the table first. We can talk about this for months to come instead of taking action and then discover that there is no available spot for Petaluma High. You may be interested to know that Santa Rosa's board voted unanimously for this to happen. And you've also probably read in the paper all the accolades that the board received from their community. It's a matter of time before all schools will follow suit and have athletic trainers. Their research can lead them to the same place that my research led me. It's a matter of public record, and it only takes one person who cares. I met last week with Mr. Bowman and provided him with a copy of that job description that I mentioned earlier. Since then, he was able to get permission to provide each of you a copy, which you should now have. This is not going away. We just might have to pay more for it in the future. We wanted you to know this is a very important issue to the parents, students, coaches, and volunteers at Petaluma. We are both mobilized and motivated to see this thing through. We're asking you to hire an athletic trainer for Petaluma High. Thanks again for your time. 3 seconds to go.
Hang on for just a second.
Yes.
As part of public comment, we are allowed to ask for clarifying questions. If
Yes.
you have a question on you, although again, we can't decide, make decisions,
I'll try my best.
debate, but I think you have a question.
Does it have Dr. Winter's information? That's what I was gonna ask him for a business card, but it sounds like that's forthcoming.
I will get it right now. I have.
Well, I
He's
think
right
maybe
back
it's
there. Just
coming
hold
to
one in
us
his
though,
hand.
maybe?
Just hold one in his hand.
We will be providing the board with copies. You have copies.
Okay, thank you. From this.
Did you have another question?
No, that was it. I just wanted to know how to contact this gentleman. That's good.
I had just a couple.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I'll qualify it as being the father of a highly concussed son last year.
I did.
So I know a little bit about what we speak.
Yes.
So 2 questions. One, what's the difference between the training that maybe the doctor can address this, and if that's appropriate, we'll do that. The training that a trainer receives and the training that is mandated by the state as far as the recognition of concussions. Any one of you would be.
A certified athletic trainer is not only trained in concussion, but also in other injury recognition. Certified athletic trainer has a bachelor's degree minimum, as well as most have master's degrees. A certified athletic trainer also has to pass a national board test in order to get that certification. So the medical experience that a certified athletic trainer brings to the table is way more than just looking online and taking a quick course that takes you, what, how long is that?
20 minutes.
20 minutes, yeah.
So-
And it's the
so to
same,
answer
it's a
my
higher,
question then, Heather, the training that you have is greater.
yes,
than
it's
that
a higher
you're
level,
required to have
yes.
as a coach.
Yeah,
exactly.
every
That was
coach
my
is just
question.
20 minutes online.
Okay. My second question is, I'm going to let you do the concussion piece. You said 20 at Casa Grande. I had 10, 15 of them at that level.
I don't know the number.
Okay.
I can't give you that.
Based upon, now there's new studies out about helmets. Where are we on helmets with regard to their age and their effectiveness?
They're 10 years. They're allowed to have it, but they have to be reconditioned every year.
I know that they're tested every year, but the technology changes.
They are given 10 years of life.
That costs.
So what are the age of the helmets we have, I guess is what
Oh, that we have?
I'm. Yes.
Well, what we try to do is we plan where we don't lose too many at one time. Like this year, I lost 30 helmets that I have to find funds for. So we've got to try to get our sequence in order where when we lose 12 a year, I can afford 12 type thing. So we lose, on the average, about 12 a year.
So how old is the fleet of helmets?
At Casa Grande, we don't have a helmet older than 3 years. We spent $30,000 that we fundraised last year, and we replaced 47 helmets. There's not a helmet that's older than 3 years right now. We raised all the money through a golf tournament and fundraising.
Can I,
Anybody have any other?
is it okay if
think I'm good.
I just wanted to address the issue of the helmets because a helmet does not prevent a concussion.
No, I
Just
understand that,
sometimes.
but my understanding in the research that I've done is that there's a dramatic difference between, say, a 7-year-old helmet and then the technology is dramatic. Yes. Did anybody else have any other questions?
So as a component of athletic training, it goes to Mr. Chris' discussion and Trent's observation about the taping requirements. So is that a key component of athletic training? That
A
you
lot
learn
of
to
what I do is
tape up and-
preventative taping as well as taking an injury that's already injured to prevent it from getting further injured. So a lot of my time is spent taping, but if I can prevent the injury from happening, then the athlete stays on the field and my job becomes a lot easier because you can't prevent everything from happening.
I get that. Is that something you just acquired as a skill set, or is that something
That's
that
something
was
that you
taught to the
learn.
doctor that
You
that
learn that
they
as an
build
athletic
into the
trainer.
program?
When you go
I'd
into
like to
athletic
answer
training
that.
school, you
What's
learn.
that?
I'd like to answer
Let's
that.
stick with the track.
No, I'm just
Again,
asking-
I'm trying not to expand the conversation.
No, no.
These are just
Do you
clarifying.
I'm asking a question. If
Just to
taping
clarify that.
is built into
Regarding
the
taping-
athletic training program,
Yes, it is,
Yes.
and it's included in the job description that you have in front of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do the next steps. Anything to add? Nothing? You good?
If, I mean, it's the board's pleasure if you want me to, I will be providing you with a copy of the job description at the end of this week's board meeting.
Let's see it and then let's approve that.
Very good.
Moving on to, thank you very much. And just to show hands, people here that are in support of that. People are here only in support of this and for nothing else.
We are only here to
They didn't understand you.
I got it. All right, thank you very much for that. Moving on to our next public comment card, we have Lisa Babbitt.
Hi, I'm Lisa Badley. I live at 106 Slavia Drive. A couple weeks ago, I heard that tutorial at Casa Grande, actually I heard at Petaluma, was going to be moved to the end of the day because students aren't using tutorial. Then it was clarified that Casa Grande gets this first, and if it works out, then Petaluma is going to get it. So I just thought I'd mention right off the get-go, if you have difficulties getting the students to tutorial at 10 o'clock, there's no way you're going to get them at the end of the day, so this is going to be a dismal failure, I think. How you're going to keep them on campus is going to be even more interesting. Maybe block schedule isn't the way to be anymore. Maybe it should be a hybrid. I think one of the things that they have tutorial for is so kids can see their teachers more often than twice a week or 3 times a week, depending on how A and B days fall. Maybe we should go Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You see your teachers, all 6 teachers. Tuesday, Thursday, A day, B days. Gives a, it was my impression that the reason why they went to block schedule was for science, doing labs, doing like projects in front of the classroom, having more time. I don't know, with all my kids in the different classes they've never had more than 1 lab a week in science that I'm aware of. My kids actually do use tutorial about 80% of the time, at least the majority of them did, or do. And I really think that it's going to be, next year for CASA, it's going to be a huge, huge mistake. I think that the kids that would use tutorial or do use tutorial, it's going to hurt them. I think that already now, at the end of all class periods, my kids do their homework. Because I've always wondered, where's your homework? Oh, I did it in class. Where's mine in class? At the end of the day, the end of class period. So they do an hour of instruction, and they do half an hour of homework. I'm not quite sure that's what tutorial was meant, the block schedule was meant to do, but that's actually, I think, pretty much what is happening in most classrooms, from my understanding. So I just thought I'd mention it before it got to Petaluma, that I don't think this is going to work very well. I'm a year ahead, so I'm not behind the curve, so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions before we move on? Moving on to the next public comment, speaker card, Jill Silverman.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I thought I'd start by just introducing myself to you and then tell you about why I'm here speaking to you. So my name is Jill Silverman, and I'm a marriage and family therapist here in Petaluma. I'm the founder and director of the Petaluma Counseling Center, where I employ and train marriage and family therapy interns, and we provide services to the community on a sliding scale. I'm also an educator. I'm an adjunct faculty at Dominican University of California, where I teach in the Graduate School of Education and Counseling Psychology. And I'm also a board member at B'nai Israel Jewish Center here in town. And the reason I tell you all of this is to just start by saying I have the utmost respect for what you do, for what the principals of our schools do, for the teachers, for the staff, in terms of the complexity of managing budgets, of thinking about students' needs, what the best is for the community. And I know that there are no easy answers. So I really do take my hats off to you and appreciate you taking the time to hear me out tonight. But the hat that I'm wearing tonight is really coming to you as the parent of a Petaluma High School varsity lacrosse player. And so it's actually lacrosse that I've come to speak to you about. I'm hoping to open a conversation again about lacrosse becoming a CIF sport at both of our high schools here, Casa Grande and Petaluma here. And I know the issue was brought before the school board several years ago. I think it was 4 years ago now, and it was an unsuccessful attempt to have that occur. But I'm hoping to start a new dialogue about that, to include the principals, the school board, and anyone who is necessary to put our minds together to achieving what I think could be a very positive things for our school. And in light of hearing about the budget, I'm glad to say there's no request for money in all of this. The idea is that we would be able to do this without drawing any resources from financially from our schools, and hopefully not taking resources from our already busy administrators and athletic directors. So as an educator, I've approached this by trying to educate myself as much as I possibly can on this topic. I've spoken to David Sturrett a couple of times. I'm slated to meet with Linda Shealy next week. I've talked to Gil Lemon, who's the commissioner of the North Coast Section CIF, to try and understand what the league would look like if our two schools were to go CIF. I've also spoken to athletic directors of Marin County High Schools, San Rafael High, San Marin High, Novato High School, to try and hear about how they're successfully funding their CIF lacrosse programs. All the public schools in Marin County now have CIF lacrosse programs, and they are self-funded, and they have been maintained for the last 6 years. I've also spoken with Don Aiello, who was the Davis Lacrosse Association president, who worked with the school board there to get the boys varsity lacrosse to be part of Davis High School. They had a different model and approach that might be worth looking at. I went to the Petaluma Youth Lacrosse League just to tell them who I was, that I was interested in this topic. They were very excited to have someone to take this issue up again, and so they've granted me the ability to kind of head up the committee to look at this issue again. And of course I spoke with our varsity coaches of the girls and boys teams to try and understand what the differences are between a CIF sport and a club sport, of which there are many. So my hope is that I was coming tonight to see if there is some way to get this issue on the agenda where I could make a presentation where you could present what your concerns are, and anyone who thinks there are obstacles that would prevent this from happening could have a dialogue and hopefully come up with some solutions in a school board meeting in the near future. Our Petaluma varsity teams are the best teams there are right now in the club division. Our girls won their division handily. Our Casa Grande and Petaluma placed first and second in Northern California. This Saturday we're flying down to Los Angeles to play in the state championships. It's a very well-developed, well-funded, and well-participated in sport. But without being able to become a CIF sport and play at that level of competitive play, we're severely limited in being able to develop our student athletes any further than they already are. So I and other parents that I represent in Petaluma would like the district to consider adding lacrosse to our schools. We believe that it is possible to do this in a way that is a win-win, that no one stands to lose in the prospect. It would be financially funded through the parents, which is how it operates in other schools. It would provide an opportunity for the student athletes to improve their skills, as well as providing more potential scholarship opportunities. And I think there is a way to do this without drawing too much resources from our athletic directors, who I imagine are already taxed, and adding a new sport would be potentially burdensome. But in speaking with Novato High School, they have team parents. Their coaches do a majority of the work. Again, I've spoken to Gil Lemon about what it would take. And you have a very large community of parents and students who have been supporting a program for the last 7 years. It's well funded and it's well developed. So I'd like the opportunity to present this information. I will include facts, figures, budgets, line items, whatever it takes to do the work and hopefully get some input. I don't know if the best thing is to come to the next board meeting or whether to suggest a task force, but I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I did not mean to throw my iPhone.
Okay, do you have a business card? I do have a business card, I think. I get it.
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. All right, my next public comment is Paul McGavin, and this relates to timely public access of public records.
Can I defer that to after any other public comment from the four people that we waited? May I defer until after?
You'd like to
the last
defer?
appropriation?
Sure, we can do that. All right, so there's 4 public comment cards, and they are eliminate Wi-Fi in schools to protect health and safety of children. My understanding is that you'd like again to present a video presentation, that you have an AV presentation, is that correct? Okay. Why don't y'all come up?
I'm just tech support, I'm not part of this group.
I'm just gonna get us started.
This is my husband. I'm Suzanne McGann.
Okay, so who are my 4 speakers?
We have
Robert Stevenson. Lady Shi.
Suzanne, I'm sorry.
Robert.
Robert, do I have a card for you? I do. Robert Stevenson, Sam, Suzanne, who's my 4?
Ling Ling.
You, sir?
And I think in the essence of efficiency, it's an 18-minute video, so that would be less than 20 minutes if we could just start the video and go through. Otherwise, each person can come up and start and stop and start and stop and start and stop.
Let me explain to you what
Okay.
speaking you have to board equals. You have 5 minutes to present per person.
Mhm.
Now, last time we accommodated you, we got a 20-minute time, and we gave you that whole time. I'm not inclined to do that. I'd like 5 minutes from each person. You're going to tell me that you're going to give me an 18-minute video presentation that's not from any of the 4 of you?
Well, it's definitely from.
But it's not the 4 of you. It's not the 4 of you speaking. It's the 4 of you coming up here to then show us an 18-minute video presentation. Is that what we're talking about?
Correct.
Correct.
We all agree on the same.
Believe in what we're trying to.
Okay. Do you have 5 minutes that you could each speak on a particular topic that relates to this? In other words, this is a public comment, so you comment. It's not a screening of a 18-minute video.
So my understanding is you've allotted time for video presentation.
In the past,
And so that.
that was one person who walked us through the whole thing, and it was a slideshow, if I remember correctly. It was a PowerPoint presentation. And you pointed stuff and you gave us, and we accommodated you, and I understood. You're telling me that this is, excuse me, you're telling me that this is an 18-minute video
Correct.
that does not incorporate any of you speaking about it.
Last month, there was 5 ladies standing up here holding pictures, and 1 lady was speaking, and you did not mention anything about it.
I believe that last month was actually an agenda item.
It was what?
An agenda item.
On the
It was
agenda.
on the agenda.
On
This is
the
public.
agenda.
I was there, and I have to say that. I don't recall that, but regardless, I've accommodated you. I guess I'll throw it to the board. There's an 18-minute video
I'm happy to
presentation.
hear comments, but.
Yeah, I'll take 5 minutes from anyone that wants to comment.
Public.
So if I understand correctly, they cannot come up and state something and play something in support of their statement? They can't do that?
Right.
They're not allowed to have computer assistance for their comment? That's what we're saying today.
Because we will continue the we will continue the video. We will talk about that portion of the video, each one of us.
If you would like to speak, supplement what you speak with the video, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, and we're all using the same video, and we're all using portions of that video to
But you
speak
gotta
what we
speak.
speak.
If I'm watching a video presentation, that's
What?
a public
Each-
comment.
each-
Perfect.
All you gotta do, play about 5 minutes, say something about it, and then the next person, you're all done. Here we go.
I'll throw that to you, I'll you.
Not at all. All right, let's do this. So who's speaking first?
Around the world,
Well,
an
I'm not
increasing
clear on
number
what
of
it's-
governments
I'm
and
not clear on what
authorities
we're
have
doing
banned
here.
or
Can you turn that off when we make a decision on what we're doing here?
Oh, I thought we were gonna do 5 minutes every talk.
No.
I'm sorry. What was that?
What they do?
I'm trying really hard to accommodate you, but I'm making it really easy.
And I feel like
First of all,
every
you're
meeting brings forward.
assistants, okay? They're the speakers, and you're assistants, okay? So assist, make them talk.
Right, so-
Second thing is, if you would like to talk now, I would suggest, Troy, that the way we structure it, is allow her to come up, explain or summarize what we're gonna see, and if she wants to show us for the bulk of her time, a 5-minute clip, then she's free to do that. And once that 5-minute clip's up, if the next gentleman wants to come and say a few things and say, I'd like to bolster that, and I don't know what your video consists of, but you want to say, and so-and-so has also noted, and let the clip speak for itself, I think that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, as long as you come up, explain to us what we're going to see, give us your comment on this issue, whatever it's going to be. I think that would work, right?
If this is, not if this is gonna exceed 5%.
No. I think they get it.
And if this is an 18-minute video that's not broken up into, we're talking about A, and this is why I believe A is so great for a world, oh, and then there's another section and another section. If this is an 18-minute video, they're gonna put on pause, say a sentence, and then play, then we're opening the door for anyone who ever wants to play a presentation on a video
Actually,
to
no,
us
that's
for
part
20
of,
minutes.
that's part of, that's a separate issue. It's going to be resolved.
No,
in two
I know it's
policies
going to
for-
be, but I mean, if this is,
Yeah, and I'm with you. So let's do this. So basically, you got, if there's 4 of you, you got about, if it's an 18-minute presentation, you got about 30 seconds to speak, and then you got your 5 minutes, or 4 minutes, or whatever it is.
Okay, so I'm Susanna Gavin. I'm a parent. I'm also the daughter of a former superintendent and principal of schools, Liberty School here in Petaluma. I think my parents, if they're still alive today, would support this cause. And this is about our concerns about Wi-Fi and the health risks that are associated, exposure to our children in the schools, and that length of exposure and what it all means. And so I'd like to show an individual 5 minutes of a video clip to demonstrate that.
Warned against the use of Wi-Fi in schools. Many experts, scientists and doctors are warning the public to take a precautionary approach. Why? Let's examine the facts. Wi-Fi is a wireless technology that allows computers, tablets and smartphones to exchange data wirelessly to a computer network. This data is transferred using microwave electromagnetic radiation. You can't see it, taste it or smell it, yet we are increasingly using this technology every day. Wi-Fi uses microwaves of the same frequency as cordless phones and microwave ovens, but with less power. This is the non-ionising radiation portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. Microwaves are a smaller section within the broader range of radio frequencies. The electromagnetic spectrum ranges from radio, mobile phones, Wi-Fi and microwaves, radar, visible light through to ultraviolet light, and then the ionising forms of radiation such as X-rays, and finally radioactive elements. Wi-Fi has a standard range of 30 metres indoors. However, walls, building materials, filing cabinets, etc. can reduce the effective range. In a school setting, the wireless access point connects laptops and tablets to the school's wired computer network, which in turn is usually connected to the internet. A Wi-Fi access point is always on and broadcasts its unique ID continually so that new devices can find it. In our Wi-Fi setup, one email takes around 1/40th of a second to transfer wirelessly from the computer to the access point. A typical 3-minute video clip is about 550 times bigger than an email. So, using the Wi-Fi, it takes around 12 seconds to download this 3-minute video. Now let's look at this in a classroom setting. Here is a class of 20 students, all with wireless devices. If 20 students in the class all downloaded a 3-minute video at the same time, it would take 4 minutes. 4 minutes of the access point at full constant power, or the equivalent of sending 10,000 emails. Now keep in mind, this is just one class downloading one 3-minute video.
How about all the other classrooms in the school building? In Australian schools, the future projection is to make all students carry notebooks or tablets and to have more resources online via the national curriculum. That's videos, tutorials, books and online quizzes. You can imagine that at the start of each lesson, the entire school will be accessing the network wirelessly to download the resources for that lesson. During these times, the power density of the Wi-Fi will be at its maximum throughout the entire school. There are no scientific studies that have been conducted specifically to investigate the health effects from Wi-Fi in schools. However, there is an increasing amount of scientific research on related wireless technologies like mobiles, mobile phone towers and cordless phones that suggest there are possible health risks from the use of these technologies. Humans are electromagnetic beings. The human heart, brain and nervous system works by using electrical signals, and this can be monitored using EEG and ECG. The fact that doctors use electrotherapy for healing purposes proves that frequencies do interact and have an effect on the body. Although some frequency bands are beneficial for healing, other non-ionising frequencies have potentially harmful biological effects. Growing numbers of scientists believe that artificial sources of electromagnetic radiation are interfering with the body's natural bioelectrical signals. Some people may be affected by exposure to Wi-Fi microwave radiation, and others may develop sensitivity to electromagnetic radiation. Reported symptoms include headaches, dizziness, anxiety, insomnia, loss of concentration, loss of memory, pressure in the eyes, deterioration in vision, sensitivity to light, nosebleeds, impaired sense of smell, ringing in ears, hearing loss, fatigue, weakness, numbness, tingling, heart palpitations and arrhythmia, shortness of breath, high blood pressure, skin problems, digestive problems and nausea, muscle and joint pain. Research also indicates to an increased likelihood of more serious long-term effects.
Robert, you're up.
All right. Well, third generation Petaluman, went to Petaluma High School, graduate. Known Paul for a couple of years now, and he's introduced me to this, and I've watched a lot of video and read a few books from the library on it too, and I believe in, where he's trying to promote or, let people know what's going on. I have 3 nephews and nieces, and my sister, she doesn't have Wi-Fi in her house. We believe in plugging in, and I believe in what he's doing. And after watching these videos, I mean, you can't not question it. I've seen 30 smart meters put on the side of, I don't know if that has the same thing, but 30 smart meters put on the side of an apartment complex. And 2 beautiful hibiscus bushes growing in front of it. And then they show 1 month later, and those 2 hibiscus bushes are dead because of, Sebastopol, other towns that are doing away with that or not allowing that kind of stuff. They're not doing it for no reason at all. And I just, I'm supporting it, very much. And,
including infertility, cancer and DNA damage. Radiation penetrates the body of a child or young person more than it does an adult. This makes children more vulnerable to microwave radiation due to their thinner skulls, softer bones, underdeveloped immune system and developing cells. They will also have a longer lifetime of exposure to EMR than adults today. The Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency, ARPANSA, is the Australian government agency which sets the standard limits for radiation exposure as outlined by the International Commission on Non-Ionising Radiation Protection, ICNIRP. Radio frequency standards were developed in the 1950s for high-powered radar systems. The standards in Australia have remained virtually the same since this time. These safety limits are based on short-term thermal injury. This means that the safety standards are only based on the heating or burning of body tissue in a short period of time, like a microwave oven. The current safety limits do not take into account any non-thermal long-term effects. This means that any biological changes to the body other than heating are not taken into account. Research studies funded by the telecommunications industry rarely show any biological effects. In contrast to this, however, the vast majority of independently funded research report long-term biological effects such as neurologic, endocrine, immune, cardiac, reproductive and other biological effects including cancer. All we can say about the current Australian safety standards is that we won't heat up using Wi-Fi. Increasing numbers of scientists and organisations from around the world are calling for the outdated safety standards to be changed. The Council of Europe states that the limits on exposure to electromagnetic fields which have been set for the general public are obsolete. They have been calling for stricter exposure limits for all equipment which emits electromagnetic waves. They believe the current permitted standards fail to protect the public against harmful biological effects which may not become known until after years of exposure. Since some people are experiencing health effects at levels well below the current exposure limits, experts want governments to inform the public about the possible risks so that the public may use this technology more safely. Since untested wireless technologies are advancing into our homes, schools, work and public spaces faster than experts can evaluate EMR health risks, scientists and doctors are calling for precautionary measures to be taken immediately to prevent extensive damage to public health. Countries like Switzerland, Italy, France, Austria, Luxembourg, Bulgaria, Poland, Hungary, Israel, Russia and China have set exposure limits 100 to 10,000 times less than Australia. This is because they recognise that there can be biological effects caused by electromagnetic radiation. The Council of Europe has called for a ban on Wi-Fi use in schools and recommends wide internet connections in schools. Several schools in England and France have dismantled their Wi-Fi systems and reverted to a wired system due to concerns raised by parents and teachers. The French National Library, along with other libraries and some universities, have removed all Wi-Fi networks. Wi-Fi has also been removed from all schools in the town of Hurreville, St Clair. The Bavarian Parliament has recommended that no schools in the province use wireless. The Frankfurt City Government said...
I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce it. That's fine. I'm Ling, parents of 2 kids, and myself is a Qigong teacher, help people getting healthier and stronger, slow the energy work. I have encountered many clients who are developing sensitivity to magnetic field, especially internet, especially wireless connection. I have many cases. So help them to overcome these challenges and very difficult because Wi-Fi is everywhere. Yeah, so this kind of practice, I help them at the same time recognizing really the importance and the damage, the influence of this technology on our body, on our health. So I'm totally supporting, be mindful, taking any step possible, especially for the young kids generations. So I have a kind of ambiguous feeling for myself because I'm so passionate about computer, internet technology myself. You cannot avoid it, But at the same time, how to protect our kids from, unnecessary damage. So I want to be open-minded, be educated, and at the same time really giving more thoughts to what is more healthy for our next generation.
And then I need to speak, we're not allowed to speak to the issue, but I would have been disappointed to not hear your public comment and your speaking. That's very valuable to me. I think that was my point.
Excellent.
That it would not install Wi-Fi in its schools until it has been proven to be harmless. The German government recommends against installation of Wi-Fi in schools, the removal of cordless phones and to use cabled connections rather than Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. The Public Health Department of Salzburg has advised schools not to use Wi-Fi. In Russia and Poland, the safety limits are much lower to include non-thermal effects. In 2008, the Russian Radiation Protection Committee gave a warning about the serious and irreparable consequences of electromagnetic radiation, especially for children. They increased this warning again in 2011 and recommended that Wi-Fi not be used in schools. In Austria, the Austrian Medical Association has pressed for a ban of Wi-Fi in schools. The Swiss government has issued caution in regard to wireless radiation emitted by baby monitors, cell phones, laptops and tablets, etc. Israel's Minister of Health supports a call to ban Wi-Fi in schools. In May 2011, the World Health Organization classified radio frequency electromagnetic radiation as possible human carcinogens. This is the same category as DDT, dry cleaning chemicals, lead, pesticides and engine exhaust. Although there have been earlier alerts about the health risks from EMR and calls for stricter guidelines to protect public health, this recent WHO warning about EMR's possible carcinogenic risk highlights the need for an urgent precautionary approach. What is a precautionary approach? When an action or policy carries the risk of harm to human health, even if there is some scientific uncertainty about the cause and effect, precautionary measures should be taken. We need to take responsible measures to reduce exposure to EMR until research demonstrates conclusive results. Some authorities in Europe and elsewhere have made conclusions about Wi-Fi health risks to children based on these reports and related studies that have examined the long-term health effects of mobile phone and mobile phone tower emissions. Australia, however, has no restrictions on the use of Wi-Fi in schools, and with policies such as the Digital Education Revolution initiative, tablets and laptops are being vigorously rolled out in schools. The federal government says that the choice to install wireless networks is one that is made by education authorities. However, the education authorities are not qualified to make decisions about public health. They just say that they are within the current safety standards as set by PANZA. At present, no one in government is acknowledging the potential for long-term biological risks of wireless in schools. If the standards are only for heating of tissue, who will be held responsible for all other biological effects? Surely the Ministry of Health should be responsible for assessing long-term risks from EMR and protecting children's health. Wireless devices are installed without any radiation emissions checks in each specific site where they are installed. Teachers and staff are unaware and untrained about monitoring the effects of EMR on children, so they are unable to recognise any symptoms from EMR exposure. Evaluating the possible long-term health effects on school children is not being conducted by the education authorities, government or the standard-setting agencies. PANZA, who sets the standards, says research relating to children...
Sam, you're up. My name is Sam, I'm a resident of Petaluma. And I think if this Wi-Fi thing goes through with the schools, the next thing is putting the Wi-Fi in all of Petaluma, and I think that's probably not a good thing because I've seen it already on the agenda. They want to put Wi-Fi in all of Petaluma to make Wi-Fi free everywhere. And I think if this is the beginning of it, and we're looking the other way this hard with our children, what is it going to do when this technology actually fully infiltrates the city and us? I mean, forget the children, they can't make their own decisions. What about us? I mean, this is very clear that if you're making decisions like this and children are involved, what happens when this starts going in higher places in the government and the cities? So that's why I'm here, and I think this is a great video to present this issue. Like, we don't care about our kids to this degree. I mean, we support Israel, why don't we follow what they do? I mean, if we're fighting this idea that this technology is bad for children, what are we thinking about ourselves? Obviously nothing, because everybody's got them in their pockets. So that's why I'm here. So I think this video really represents, I mean, we're all sitting here going, and the kids still are going to school tomorrow, and everything's moving forward. So that's why I'm here, to represent, you know, what these people are thinking, the way they're thinking, what they're trying to say. Thanks.
Is limited and the possibility of harm cannot be completely ruled out. Given that Wi-Fi has not been proven to be safe for long-term biological effects, and there are no specific studies conducted to look at the risk to children, why are these wireless EMR technologies being rolled out in schools? When it comes to long-term health risks, governments don't always take swift actions or a precautionary approach. This was the case with smoking and asbestos. In addition to public health, governments have many responsibilities, including the economy, taxation and foreign policy. These can conflict with the government's health protection role. In Australia, telecommunications is an $18 billion industry per year. This is a huge economic success and valuable tax revenue for the government. To protect these interests, government and industry want conclusive evidence of biological effects. This could take another 15 to 20 years, by which time the damage could be extensive and irreversible to children. Employees of the telecommunications industry are often the experts called upon to provide advice on the safety limits. Surely there is a conflict of interest in having industry representatives tasked with this responsibility. In Australia, APANZA follows ICNIRP's exposure limits. However, the European Parliament raises concerns about ICNIRP's unclear origin and structure and suspects ICNIRP of having rather close links with the industries. They also say that the industry benefits from recommendations for maximum threshold values of electromagnetic fields. Could this be the reason why obsolete safety standards are maintained and biological effects are disregarded despite mounting independent scientific evidence? Scientists from both sides agree that more research is needed. However, independent research which shows biological effects fails to receive further funding. Some scientists who have conducted research and found evidence of biological effects have been discredited, discriminated, had their funding stopped and their research prevented from being published. Shouldn't these very scientists be the ones that are supported and funded to clarify research into this area of uncertainty? Isn't it crucial to support genuine independent research that can provide objective evidence to protect public health rather than industry profits? We can't use obsolete safety standards developed for radar to prevent short-term heating injuries and hope that there are no long-term effects to children when used in a classroom setting. We urgently need objective, credible research into the long-term biological effects of wireless on children. We can't afford to put the convenience of wireless technology and cheaper short-term costs before children's health. Authorities like the European Parliament and the European Environmental Agency believe that there is already sufficient scientific evidence for governments to take an immediate precautionary approach, especially to protect children who are most vulnerable. They state that waiting for high levels of scientific and clinical proof can lead to very high health and economic costs, as was the case in the past with asbestos, leaded petrol and tobacco. However, ignoring the early warning could be much worse as EMR affects.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would encourage you to email our presentation to all the board email addresses.
Sure.
Those who would like to see the end of it.
Sure. No problem. I'll do that.
Appreciate the flexibility.
Appreciate the flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, my name is Paul McGavin. I'm a parent of a student here in Petaluma.
Sorry, 1 second. I have a possible speaker card for waiting.
I would just follow
Okay. All right, now, so for our final speaker, Mr. McGavin, relating to Petaluma City School District denied timely public access to its public records on 5/28/13.
Correct. And I checked in with Sue today. She said I got 5 minutes and I can cover any topic I want. I will do that for a portion of it.
That is incorrect. You may
Okay.
talk about access to public records.
Perfect. I will do that. Okay. So these are devices that need to have the public records used for in order to then start figuring out what are the levels of microwave radiation that are actually in our classrooms.
No.
Yes,
You're
they are.
not- That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about district denied timely public access to public records. We have spoken about your concern about Wi-Fi's in the school district. We will not speak about it again in public comment.
Okay, that's fine. So I made a public comment, a public California records request, which is from 2004. And in this law, there are all kinds of statements about exactly how the district needs to actually treat the request. And so what I've done is I properly made a request
and did so on the 17th of this month. And I did that by emailing Steve Bowman, and I actually hand-delivered it and got a stamp from the office. So in there, it's clearly stating exactly the records that I'm looking for. So specifically, what I need to do is look at all of the contracts that have been done between the last technology plan and the present for all wireless installations. I need to review those contracts. I also highlighted a specific contract, and that's the award of bid recommended motion about the board award bid to the E-rate project for wireless at McKinley-McDowell Elementary Schools to AMS.net. That is also a public record that I would like to review. In addition, we need to understand what is the current setup of the wired and wireless technologies in our schools and how that will be affected by the plans that are in place over the years. Because we have specific changes for next year where we're going to pull wireless technology out of
Again,
the
I'm not interested in the wireless component of it. I'm interested in your concern over the ability to get records.
Cool.
Let's talk about that.
No worries. Okay. So what I noted is that I made specific requests for those records, and this is a quote directly from the law, from the California Public Records Request, and there's code 6250-6246.48. Quote, public records are open to inspection at all times during the office hours of the agency, and every person has a right to inspect any public record except for specific exceptions to disclosure listed in a series of sections which I will not read. And any segregable portion shall be available for inspection. Access is immediate and allowed at all times during business hours. The agency may not adopt rules that limit the hours records are open for viewing and inspections. The agency must provide assistance by helping to identify records and information relevant to the request and suggesting ways to overcome any practical basis for denying access. So there are specific guidelines on what someone can do when they ask for records. I can show up and ask for records. I should be able to see them immediately. I made an extra step to give the district 10 days notice to say I would like to come and see the records in those 10 days. And I even gave them an extra 4 days in case it was harder to get it all together. The response, however, was a letter. And the letter was not actually consistent with the CPRA guidelines. And so because they missed things in the letter, even though they were trying to actually achieve a goal, they failed because they did not provide the proper reasons and they did not provide a specific date of when the information would be available. So we can read that letter afterwards, beyond my 5 minutes if you wish. But the point here is that the section lists specific unusual circumstances for when an agency may actually write a letter saying they need more time, and the district cited none of those reasons. So the reasons that they did give is not part of their exceptions. So the desired extension, therefore, is not sufficient under the CPRA. No specific date was provided, and no allowed unusual circumstance was specified in the extension in the letter. In addition, the Petaluma City School District in this letter is trying to pick and choose which public records they would like to share, and they cannot do that by the laws of the CPRA. And so they specifically say your request for correspondence, emails, documents, etc. is already public information. That's immaterial. It was requested. The district is not obligated to provide a response to your questions posed in your correspondence. I have asked questions that have been unanswered for over 2 months. Documentation that does not already exist shall not be created. I have no idea what that means, but I hope it's not going to diminish the public records that I am asking for. So specifically, I think there are some proper next steps. The proper next steps are, for any records that are currently on site at the Petaluma City School District, I should have a right to see them tomorrow. I made the request over 10 days ago. It is my right to walk up and inspect them. I was preventing from doing so today. In fact, I was just handed this letter and say, get out or we'll call the police. That was the response. And so I believe that that is not the appropriate way to handle a member of the public who needs public records in order to educate themselves. I am not asking for any copies of these public records. I'm asking only to inspect them. So then for any records that are not currently on site, meaning they're at an off-site, they need a little extra time to do that, well, there's 14 days. 14 days allows you to do that. That's May 31st. The 14 days that they're quoting doesn't apply because I am not asking for copies.
That is
So,
fine.
thank you. So your concern is that you have requested, this is a yes or no, you requested copies of
Not copies,
public
I requested
records. You've written
inspection.
inspection of public records that
Correct.
you've not been able to do.
Correct.
Steve, administration will work with council to make sure that it gets.
Yeah, we are working with council regarding this issue.
All right, so your contact will be Steve.
Good.
And Steve will work through our training to make sure that you get what you're supposed to get in the time frame you're supposed to get.
Cool, so that would be starting tomorrow.
I can't tell you that because I'm not a teacher.
Okay. Well, according to the law, it's tomorrow.
According to your interpretation, laws tomorrow, I don't know.
According to the lawyer I spoke to today, also tomorrow.
Good. Very good.
Thank you.
Public comment is not closed.
Wait, they said he'd follow him if he.
Oh, excuse me. Well, then, if that's not, I thought, I misunderstood you. I thought, all right, well, then let me do this then because we're past the 20 minutes. You would have to, as a board, vote to allow the extension of the 20 minutes of any topic they want to speak on this one.
I'll make a motion to extend time to allow Principal Siri to just have a public comment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to vote no.
I'm here in the capacity of a parent of 2 students at Mary Collins School, not as a principal of a high school. I grew up in Mandeville, Jamaica. It's a third world country. And my K-12 school was in the south center of the island. We have had Wi-Fi access at that school since 2006, and it's made a big difference in the academic achievement of the students at that school and of the work the teachers are doing there. At Petaluma High, many students, 8 out of 10 students, according to our last poll, bring Wi-Fi enabled devices to school every day. They're not on airport mode, not on airplane mode. Point being that, as one of the speakers mentioned, you can't avoid it. Wi-Fi is with us. It is not only a critical tool for teachers and students to learn, it is with us. You cannot walk through Petaluma without being in a Wi-Fi enabled area. To target a school or target schools in this way is missing the point. If this group really has intentions to do something beyond, they might be better spending their resources and time at the state or national level. Because if the German government is in fact correct, then that might be the way to go. Excuse me?
I'm not saying, just your comments.
Okay, I'm sorry, you appear to be doing something with your hands.
You're addressing me, I'm just addressing you. Go for it.
Any attempt at isolation is going to restrict and inhibit student learning, and it would put Petaluma City schools at a competitive disadvantage over their neighboring schools. I suggest that restricting internet access to wired devices will likely lead to a migration of students to schools where wireless devices are in use. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment. Moving on the agenda. Reports on activities, correspondence to school board members. We've got a district leadership team meeting. Does someone want to speak to that?
Yeah, we met last Monday night, and it's a group of administration, teachers, CSEA, parents who've been getting together to discuss the MBA plan and all of everything. Your focus is on parent communication.
That is a huge.
It's huge. It's very big.
Various award presentations, Valley Oaks 8th grade promotion.
Sherry and I attended that this afternoon. We had 2 students that were promoted, and according to what they said, they are going to continue that program next year as high school students.
Very good. And we got some announcing that NCS varsity softball and SCL tournament. Those are our report of activities, correspondence. Let's go to the consent agenda. I'll take a motion. All those in favor? Aye. Item 2, Administration Human Resources, hold Resolution 121328 and Resolution 121328 of the Board of Education, Petaluma City School and Elementary and Joint Union High School Districts, eliminating 2 class classifications of classified positions totaling 8.2 hours per day effective July 31st, 2013 be adopted.
So at the last meeting, we brought,
I don't know, I had a motion. Second, okay. Thank
yeah,
you.
motion and a second.
Yes.
At the last meeting, we brought, oh, sorry, Ron.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
I've been waiting all this time in suspense and able to say the 3 or 4 words that I have to say. Please let me at least do that. I'm sorry.
A couple of positions that weren't noted during the earlier layoffs. There were 2 positions, both of them through, one of them was through lack of funds. It was a grant that had been, that has ended. And it was not noted that one of our employees was paid through that grant, and so we had to get a layoff notice. The other was because of a transfer of our parcel tax funds from library funding and services to technology. The person who is actually the position for that position has moved from library to a computer lab coordinator, and so there needs to be a layoff to create that other position.
Any questions?
Yeah, I know that the SLC grant is done, but I have to express how disappointed I am that we're not able to fund that, because I find that very valuable. I just wanted to express my disappointment, because I'm really impressed with the work that they're doing at cost of living.
And although I know that wasn't a question, I actually know a little bit about that school and the work that they're doing, and I know that they're working very hard to continue to sustain that work. I work with the community board to try to pull them together. And much of what they're doing is continuing.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so let's move on to hold item number 5 in business services. Petaluma Joint Union High School District Citizens Oversight Committee recommended motion that the board appoint Thomas, is it Donna Ho? Donna Ho as the parent representative on Petaluma Joint Union High School District Citizens Oversight Committee.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Yeah, did you have anything before me?
I don't think there's a comment on there. Did you all want to comment?
Replacing a parent or a participant who is no longer able or eligible to participate on the oversight committee.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just didn't assume.
That's fine. No worries.
Okay. We have item 6, the discussion. Anybody want to talk about that? Any questions, concerns? Okay. Public report of action taken in closed session. We have 1 case presented to us in closed session. And again, this is a discipline issue where facts are presented to the Board of Education, and we take those into consideration. We'll have a vote out here. Case number 34, a case has been presented to the board that the student did commit an expellable act as defined by the California Education Code. Recommended motions for the board to expel and to suspend the site discipline team's recommendation for expulsion in accordance with board policy and to allow continued enrollment in a district-operated school under mandated conditions. The student's suspended expulsion status will be in effect for the spring semester of 2012-2013 school year and the fall semester of 2013-2014 school year. Conditions above subject to review with evidence of positive attendance, satisfactory behavior, substance abuse counseling program and screenings, community service, and appropriate academic performance.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So see that passes 5-0. Future business, do we have any?
Next meeting, we'll be bringing the tentative budget to the board for information.
Okay. I would like to take the opportunity to again thank Carolyn for 23 years of service, for showing the rest of us how to do a good job, and reminding us every day that we see you that we do this for the children.
Don't take anything for granted, I'll say.
Sorry about that. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor again. I really have enjoyed my tenure with the board, and I've enjoyed working with all of you and the previous board members and working with the administrators. I I think we do a bang-up job in this community. And if sometimes we miss the boat a little bit, it's not for the decline.
You will be missed.
We love you, man.
I second that. You will be
You
missed.
will be missed.
I second that.
And we retain the right to call you and ask questions.
Sure. I leave a message, I get back every day.
With that, I will adjourn this meeting for signing papers. Whatever those